Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be doing something that I haven't done in a very long time. That's right, we're going to be talking about a movie, specifically the Lego Batman movie. Okay, there's a bit of build-up that I need to describe here before I get into the movie itself. Most primarily surrounding two things: my thoughts on the Lego movie and my thoughts upon Batman as a character. And as I've done in previous movie vlog / review things, this is going to be entirely unscripted, so it's going to flow a little bit more off the cuff than usual. I'm going to try to keep things semi-coherent, but friendly warning, there may be unintentional spoilers because, again, I'm kind of doing this off the cuff. You've been warned. If you want to go see it, go see the movie. It really is something really fun. I enjoyed this a lot, but at the same time, if you don't want to be spoiled by accident, I recommend turning off the video right now, go see the movie, then come back to this. You back? Okay, let's go. So let's start off talking about the Lego movie. And let's keep in mind that I don't think anybody expected the Lego movie to be as good as it was. The Lego movie really captured a moment in time where we expected it to be fun. Like, the creative team behind it was in Cloudy and the Chance of Meatballs. I think they were also behind 21 Jump Street, the remake that was way better than anybody expected. But when they stepped up for the Lego movie, they was like, okay, you're still making a movie out of a toy property. Like, there was no reason that it was going to be good. And then the Lego movie happened and it was amazing. I enjoyed the hell out of that movie. But not just because the jokes were so fast, the musical cues were incredibly on point, the story arc was so well put together, and that ending of that movie, that gets me in the feels every single time. It really touched an element and really transcended its source material in a way that nobody expected, and I absolutely adored. Again, you have to have seen it if you haven't. Now, of course, the big breakout character of that was Will Arnett's Batman. And yeah, I kind of loved how he was put in that particular movie as one of the master builders. And it was very much a send-up of the very dark, gritty, like, I am Batman sort of thing. And yeah, I might dip into the Will Arnett Batman voice. I'm actually halfway decent about it, even though it does kind of cross over with my Hulkamania voice, but we're getting off topic. Anyway, to talk about Batman, he's not one of my favorite superheroes. Like, of the Trinity, I like Superman a lot more, and honestly, I like Wonder Woman a hell of a lot more. I'm really psyched for that movie. But Batman, see, like everyone else, as a teenager, I really thought he was a compelling character, especially coming around with The Dark Knight and Batman Begins, and those two movies really did a lot to rehabilitate that character after what happened with Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, because I don't really have as many fond memories of Batman Returns or the original 1989 Batman. Again, I was really young seeing those movies. I've gone back to them recently. They're good, but they don't have the same gravitas for me. They don't hold the same place in my memory that The Dark Knight does. But what I think is important to stress here is that, and every time I've gone back to The Dark Knight, I've noticed this, Christian Bale as Batman is the least interesting character in that movie. He has an arc, for sure, and I totally get what Christopher Nolan was going for there, but when you think about the characters that epitomize the best moments of that movie, at least for me, of course you're going to Heath Ledger, but also Aaron Eckhart. Also someone like Gary Oldman, who has been repeatedly underrated as Commissioner Gordon, and by far some of the best acting in that entire trilogy. Hell, even Eric Roberts was in that. He was great. I really enjoyed the hell out of that. There's some really smart little moments of stunt casting that I really enjoyed in The Dark Knight specifically. But moving beyond that, one of the things that I've come to realize is that Batman as a character, especially as the years have gone by, he's been a lot less inspirational for me, especially when you start digging into the psychological concepts and ideas that lurk behind Batman. Of course, he's this uber-rich guy who beats up criminals who are likely of lower class and fights against a colorful rogues gallery who have really consistently been far more interesting than he's ever been. And he doesn't even have the same thing like Superman, which holds such a huge place in iconography, and there's such a level of symbolism and greater depth balanced out against the conflicts of the man Clark Kent that I always found fundamentally compelling, and Wonder Woman is in such a completely different universe that I found her incredibly compelling. My point is that by every opportunity to try to normalize Batman, you've subsequently made him even less interesting. And you start realizing that when the movies don't get as deeply into the psychological complex behind Batman, I just don't tune in the same way. It just doesn't really work for me. And especially when you follow it up with movies like The Dark Knight Rises, which I thought was okay, and I think the ending is that movie is terrible. And then you had Batman v Superman, which was, look, I appreciate what DC is trying to do with their extended universe sort of thing, but Man of Steel had huge problems, and Batman v Superman even more so. I don't think that extended universe is off to a good start at all, most simply because they're doubling down on elements of the grim and gritty, serious Dark Knight. And I'm sorry, I just don't get into that in the same way. You get kind of sick of that sort of psychological problem when you don't get into the supporting cast, you don't get into the elements of whimsy and humor and greater color that made Batman so much more of an interesting character, that actually made Batman an interesting character. Not his rogues gallery, not Gotham, but actually Batman himself. And thus, it's kind of hilarious that it seems like the makers of the Lego Batman movie had the exact same idea as I did. Let's get into the plot briefly. Basically what happens is Batman is now in a situation where Commissioner Gordon is retiring and giving off things to Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl, and basically she wants to clean up the city, doing all those things like, you know, like public work spending, like actually getting involved in cooperating and trying to really crack down on the Joker in a way that it actually might prove to be lasting systemic fixes so that you don't really need Batman in the same way. I'll immediately say I appreciate it being so on the nose of a lot of these criticisms, and that's arguably one of the main thrusts of the film, is that by stripping out all the joy out of Batman, he really has kind of a dour, grim existence. And part of the main goals of this movie is interjecting some of that life back into it and acknowledging that Batman really isn't that much of a character outside of his rogues gallery. So let's get this out of the way. I like it. I don't love this movie. I do not think it's as strong as the original Lego movie, and on a thematic level, it gets part of the way there for me, but I don't think it gets all the way there. So let's get a couple of the technical elements like the acting and direction out of the way. Will Arnett is perfectly cast. I love the voice work he does there. There are so many like little subtle gags that come in with Batman himself, especially in how he's rendered and animated, especially a lot of the Bruce Wayne scenes, which I think are freaking hilarious. I was a little not disturbed, but it wasn't my ideal casting for Michael Cera as Robin. I don't think it's a bad choice, but a couple of the jokes, they lean a little easy when it comes to Robin's character. Like, there's normally more of an arc there that I was hoping for that didn't really materialize. When it comes to Zach Galifianakis as the Joker, not the best Joker. If I'm being bluntly honest, there have been far better Jokers. I'm not surprised they went for a more light comedic side of that character, but I also think that it fits with the tone of the movie, but the more I think about it, the less danger inherent in that Joker, the less I think the overall plot of the movie works. I'll come back to this. Honestly, the real standout for me was Rosario Dawson as Barbara Gordon. I thought she did a fantastic job. There's a lot of subtlety that comes through in her delivery and performance that I don't think will get enough credit, especially considering that she's voice acting there. And overall, I liked a lot of the otherwise cast of characters that showed up here. There's a lot of expressiveness, there's a lot of flavor, there's a lot of the same manic energy that popularized the first Lego movie, but also enough moments to take a step back and allow us to get a little bit more insight into the darker, slightly more grim sides of Batman's iconography. I say all that with the acknowledgement that this is easily one of the most colorful and visually vibrant versions of the Batman iconography and mythos that I've seen probably since the Schumacher Batman movies. And I don't think that's precisely a bad thing. Okay, we're gonna come back to themes here, and this is where, as I said, I have no problem with a large majority of this movie being a gigantic send-up of the fact that Batman needs to be this grim, snarling, I am the night figure. I see all that and I'm like, okay, I'm entirely alright with the movie sending this up, and it does get to an emotional core. of why Batman would behave like that. Of course, there's, my parents are dead! But beyond that, there's also the element that he doesn't want to bring in more people into a family because he would feel responsibility and the fear of losing them. That's a powerful underlying theme. And you know what? I like the fact that a lot of this movie does circle back to, hey, let's all come together and you need to be able to work past the fear of loss. That's a powerful underlying motive in the theme. And you know what? For a Batman movie, especially when you're trying to inject a little bit more life and color, and yes, make it more kid-friendly, which I'm entirely behind, that's really the right way to go if you're not looking to play it as grim and as serious. But here's where I start taking issue with overall the thematic arc. Because Batman, at least if you know the history, kind of has a point. I saw that most recent animated version of The Killing Joke. Friendly advice, do not see that most recent animated version of The Killing Joke. It's bad. But when it comes back to this, is that there is a dark side to what happens when Batman's in a situation, because loved ones around him do get hurt. They do get killed. I understand Batman does have kind of a point with this. And I wish this movie at least acknowledged that element of moral complexity. At least acknowledged that, yeah, there is that additional element of danger that comes to Batman. He does have a point that people around him could seriously get hurt or potentially die. I wish that they had made the acknowledgement that, yeah, it's okay, we know that, we're still going to support him anyway. Kind of similar to what like Mary Jane did in Spider-Man 2. Like, I really loved that scene. I wish some of that, a level of complexity came through into this movie. Now, granted, it's very much a kid's movie in that regard. It's not aiming for that level of complexity, but in a strange way it kind of is, because there are the subtle, quieter moments that you will not see in a lot of average kids' movies, along with a buttload of Batman comic book references. It's clear this movie is trying to hit to more of an adult audience, and I wish they had tapped into that a little bit more strongly. Of course, they're also trying to tie it back to the original Lego movie. This is where I feel there are opportunities that were missed, and that were some of the plot holes and underlying plot structure starts to break down a little bit for me. A lot of it's tied into the whole master builder stuff. That's how Batman continues to manage to reassemble all his vehicles when they keep getting blown up or falling apart. But also there's a big part about the Phantom Zone, because they're tying it into the DC animated universe, and, well, not DC animated universe, the DC universe in general. And that's where Superman is putting Zod and his enemies. The thing is that since it's the Lego movie, this is also where, when the Joker eventually ends up in the Phantom Zone, he finds enemies like Voldemort and Sauron and Godzilla and King Kong and a bunch of other elements that Warner Bros. Has under their umbrella. And at the same time, I like this. It's a cool idea. It integrates the rest of the Lego movie universe in, but at the same time, it also serves to marginalize Batman's really terrific rogues gallery. Again, they've got a couple great elements that come through in the beginning scenes, like especially that first scene, which I really enjoyed, but at the same time, you're also spreading thin a rogues gallery that really has so much color, you don't need to do that. Of course, a lot more of the focus is on the Joker and to a lesser extent Harley Quinn. And I kind of loved how much this movie was poking fun at Suicide Squad, because, yeah, kind of well-deserved there too. But at the same time, you take a strong backing cast of villains in Batman's own iconography, and you slightly weaken it, just by spreading it thinner. And it also raises the question that when all these enemies eventually do come and climax and may launch a pretty freaking serious and dark attack upon Gotham, why doesn't Batman go off and recruit, I don't know, the other master builders? You see him interact with the Justice League in the points of the movie, and I'm like, yeah, the Justice League might be pissed because Batman may have stolen something from them earlier on, but that's not a big enough reason. I'm sure some of them, like Superman, would set some of that aside in order to come help. And the more this movie wants to tie itself into the Lego movie universe, the more some of those plots feel a little bit stretched. And that leads to the other big thing. As the Lego movie had such a powerful, potent climax and closer in terms of that big scene that happens at the end, that you all know what it is, but at the same time, this movie seems to try for that, especially with all the allusions back to fathers and sons and that level of family connection. And I don't think it gets there. It relies a lot more heavily upon people's pre-existing knowledge of the Batman mythos, and I think without the deeper weight that comes with absorbing all of it, some of the weight will ultimately feel lost to a younger audience to which this movie is obviously playing. Let's be honest, a lot of people in that younger audience, and I saw it with a bunch of kids, they will not appreciate the level of darkness to which Batman has sunk in recent years. So I have to wonder if that arc has the same amount of weight to them, at least in comparison with similar thematic arcs that you saw in the Lego movie. And that's ultimately one of the reasons why I find some of the thematic arc frustrating about this. I mean, I appreciate taking the piss out of Batman's dark and grim and gritty. I appreciate that. But at the same time, that's because I've read The Dark Knight Returns, and I've read The Dark Knight Strikes Again, and I've read All-Star Batman and Robin, and I've seen every Batman movie, and I'm well immersed in that comic book universe. And I appreciate what it would mean to take steps out and delve a little bit more into the dynamic of why Batman resides in this, and why he can step away from it, and why it now has the reason to step away from it. And I don't know if younger audiences will be able to appreciate it in the same way as the more universal themes that you saw in the Lego movie. That said, this movie does make an effort to get there, and one thing I need to call out is the music cues. Hot damn, some of the music choices in this movie were just phenomenal. I don't know the last time I heard, I think it's a Silver Connection song with Fly Robin Fly coming up. It comes up a couple of times. I think I was the only one laughing my ass off at that scene, but my god, it was so funny. And there was a lot of like silly little musical gags if you were following along with a couple really cute romantic comedy references that I think I laughed more at than anyone else in the audience, especially some of the kids. And you know what, that might be part of the issue. Like, it's aiming, there's two different types of humor that's being approached here, and they don't feel married as seamlessly as they would in, say, your average Disney movie. But overall, yes, I like this. I think it's really funny. I think some of the lyrical jokes, I think some of the written jokes, if you can follow this movie, I want to see it a few more times just to make sure I can catch all the references, because there are a lot of references. You can tell that the people who wrote and made this movie clearly love the characters of Batman, probably more than I do, and love the mythos and the universe of Batman to a great extent, but also enough to make fun of it and kind of take the piss out of it, which I really adored, and that takes balls as a creator to actually do that sort of thing. Acknowledge how much you're a fan of something, but also be able to acknowledge the real flaws and how that character has progressed. I really do respect that. Now, is it perfect? I wouldn't say so. I think there are plot frustrations for me. I think the thematic arc is slightly weaker. I wish that ultimately there had been a little bit more thematic complexity, or the charge to go into some of that heavier, bigger territory that the Lego movie approached. I'm not sure how much this movie will resonate as much with certain audiences, especially the younger audiences, to which this will play inevitably much closer to. But hey, you never know. The kids in there sound like they were having a blast. Also, to let you know, I saw this in one of those 4D screenings where you have the chairs moving and you have the blast of steam and smells and everything that comes all around you. It was an experience. This first time I ever did one of those things, I kind of enjoyed it. But if you have any sort of motion sickness, or if you're not used to that sort of theater going experience, you're gonna hate it. It was immersive, I will give it that, and there were several points that really did catch me off guard. Even though overall it's an immersive experience, it was kind of really fun. I kind of enjoyed it. It felt like a theme park ride, and I haven't been on a theme park ride like that in a long time. So for me, I'm thinking 7 out of 10, I think, is fair. Again, this is not going to be a movie, I think, for everyone. I think kids are going to love it. Hardcore comic book fans who can laugh at Batman and who can understand, who can add a little bit more of the silliness back in without it becoming overtly campy, and can accept the emotional arc that would go into this character. Those fans are going to love this. If you're a fan more of the Batman v Superman, the grim and gritty type, I don't know how much you're going to like this. Like, unless you have a sense of humor about it, I can see you being a little put off by this and kind of alienated, especially because this movie is kind of taking a massive dump on all of that, and I'm kind of okay with that, by the way. So yeah, overall, good movie. I'm happy I saw it. I'm happy one of you guys on Patreon requested it. And until next time, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time. Because we both agree on great.